Over the 3 different interfaces for Pulsar today, which is the program director, the teacher and student interfaces. So we're going to start first and foremost with the program director. So I'm going to get started by logging in. Let's see, let me move our video to the other side. Okay. So I'm logging in using a fake username and password that we just use for demo purposes. For program directors, your username and password should have already been emailed to you. But if for some reason you don't have it, please let us know. I did post the link to both this website, the Pulsar website, and also our email, which is, again, pulsar@uoregon.edu, in case for some reason you're missing that. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. This is what the program director site looks like. Before I dive too deeply into what the program director can actually do, I'm going to go over some more general functions. So these exist not only for the program director, but also for the teacher and student. So the first one is this little question mark bubble here. If you click that, you can access tutorials from this link. You can also see our email. But it also has this help and feedback button, which is what I'm going to show you. And this pulls up a tech support contact form wherever you are in the site. This is a really, really nice tool to use, especially because if you're in the middle of something or notice a problem, you can input your issue right away and you don't have to leave the page and go to our tech support page, which there is also that. And so here you can just enter your contact info and screenshots or any text to tell us what your issue is. And then you just hit the red submit. You can also clear your form and start over. But do note the more detailed you are about any issues you run into, the faster and better we will be able to help you. And also we are generally really good and quick at responding to any technical support issues. So please do email us if you have problems. Don't just try to suffer through. The other functionality that's common to all of the different platforms is this tutorials. It was also accessible through the question mark bubble. But here you have access to lots of PDFs and videos that were designed to help walk you through the different functionalities of Pulsar, not only as a program director, but also for teachers and students. All of them are at the same place. So you have all sorts of different resources here. I highly recommend combing through it and familiarizing yourself with it. And if you're a teacher, it's also great to look at the tutorials for students to get a better sense of what they're going to be working with. And I'll also be going over the student page today too.
Real quick, Isabel.
Yeah.
Can you go ahead and remute everyone just so that we don't have the echo going on?
Oh, sure thing.
And then unmute yourself.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. And so then the other thing that's common to all of these are the 2 training modules. We have one for new users. So if this is your first time using Pulsar or StarTalk programs. And then we also have one for veteran users. I'll just click on the new user for now, but they're pretty similar. One is just more advanced and assumes that you already have prior knowledge about this type of platform. And this is really cool. It has little activities for you to do and self-assessments and just helps, again, walk you through the platform in a really step-by-step manner. So again, when you have time, I highly recommend checking out these functions. Again, so it's the question mark bubble for tech support and also tutorials, or you can access the tutorials training modules both from the About drop-down menu, which are in all the different platforms, both for teachers, students, and program directors. So quickly, are there any questions about that before I move on to program directors specifically? Just give you a second to ask any questions.
No questions here from Judy.
Great, thank you, Judy. Okay, well, I'm going to move on to program director. And again, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat window. So as a program director, this is what your dashboard will look like. Here you have this drop-down menu with the different programs you have access to editing. For most program directors, you'll only have one, but in the event that you do have multiple, this is where you can switch between them. I'm just going to stick with this Castles one. And I would say the biggest functionality you have is the ability to create groups. It's really important that you go on and create all of your groups as soon as possible, because without creating groups, your teachers and students don't have groups to join. So doing that as quickly as possible is really important. On the left side here is where you will create the groups, and I'll walk you through that in just a second. And on the right side is where you have already created and pre-existing groups. So when creating a group, first you want to name the group. Sorry for the autofill stuff there. So we'll just call this test webinar 4. You can choose your program languages. I'm just going to do Swahili, which is the Castles language. And then this is probably the most important aspect when it comes to creating a group, is this allow instructors to change assigned can-do statements. You can either select yes or no. If you select yes, essentially what it does is allows teachers to go in and add can-do statements or change can-do statements as they see fit. So for example, if students are really showing interest in a particular topic and the teacher feels like they have time to incorporate it into the pre-existing program, but there aren't can-do statements that necessarily fit it, they can go in and check the can-do statements that do apply and add them to the can-do statements that were already populated from Sophie. If you select no, the teachers will not be able to do that, and they'll just be using the can-do statements that were already approved and synced to their group. The rest of this, the description, contact name, phone number, and email are all optional, but help in the event that we need to contact you or you have questions. For now, for the demo purposes of this, I'm not going to fill them in, so I'm just going to create this as is. And then if you scroll down, the newer groups that you create will be at the bottom. So we see test webinar 4 here. If you click show details, you'll see everything that you entered in. So if I had added a description or contact name, it would be in here. You can also delete the group should you be done with it or feel you want to delete it. And then this button here, the assign can do button, I'm not going to go over that because for Pulsar programs, all of your assigned can do statements should already be populated from Sophie. And I believe that all of them have already been synced. They sync every night. And so anything we've gotten so far should already be in the system. So
I'll just make a quick note that anything that is approved in Sophie will be synced. If it has not been approved, it will not be synced over to Pulsar.
Yeah. And I believe approval takes about a week, correct, Carl?
You know, I'm not sure specifically on the approval process. So
okay. Well, so if you don't see your can-do statements and you have sent them in, perhaps they're just awaiting on the approval process. Otherwise, you can contact us if you have questions or issues with that. So this is really it for the program director functionalities. Really, I'd say the biggest thing is deciding whether or not to allow teachers to change the assigned can-do statements. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here again. If you guys have any questions about the program directors, please ask them now, and otherwise we'll move on to teachers. So I'll just give you guys 1 second. Okay, so let's move on to the teacher platform. Oh, wait, we have one. Okay, so our one question, what is the difference between Pulsar and Apple? Do we use both or choose either? And I won't be able to see the dashboard.
I'm not sure what Apple is specifically.
Yeah.
Probably a StarTalk tool that Castles doesn't have any involvement in.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry, we don't know the answer to that question.
But Pulsar is where your students will actually upload evidence. Pulsar is a customized version specifically for StarTalk of Linguafolio. We've made it a lot easier this year to use and rebrand it as Pulsar. Yes, student assessment, yes. let's see.
Let's see.
Gotcha. So I think the big difference would be that in Pulsar, all of your StarTalk specifically chosen program can-do statements are what you're going to see and what students will see, versus Apple sounds like it would be like all of the actual can-do statements. But again, we have no control over Apple, so we don't use that at Castles.
Great. Any further questions?
The only other thing I'll add that was a common question in the last webinar, high school StarTalk programs are required to use Pulsar. I believe anything below high school, so middle school programs and elementary school programs, you are not required, and thus we have not set up any programs in the Pulsar system for those middle school and elementary school programs. If you would like to use Pulsar, you're certainly welcome to, but please email us at Pulsar@UOregon, and we'll help you get set up so that your program can access Pulsar as well.
Great, thank you, Carl. Yeah, that's a good, important point to note. And as Carl just said, Pulsar is not only for high school students, but high school students are required to use it. And so I believe, yeah, if you're middle school or elementary school and you do not already have access to it, then you can email us in order to get access.
Correct. So if you're a high school program, you should have received an email from Pulsar@UOregon that includes the like program director information and program information. But the list that we use to pre-populate that does not include middle school or elementary school programs, only high school program. So if you're a high school program, you do not need to email us again. But if you're a middle school program and you want to use Pulsar, you do need to email us.
So
go ahead.
Program director account, one person was unable to see the dashboard. Carl, would that be just an issue of the account? Or?
I'm guessing it's which account you're using and whether it's actually a program director account versus an instructor account. If you can email the details to pulsar@uoregon.edu, we'll make sure that you have the right program director login and access to the correct program. University students, do they need to use Pulsar? I don't know specifically about university programs, honestly. You might have to ask the StarTalk people directly. I don't know if your program received the email that included the program director login, then you're good to go. Otherwise, you would need to contact us. I'm not sure about whether or not the requirement, though, from StarTalk exists for university students, or university programs, I should say. Program director, divide one group into two. Yes, you would typically do this at the instructor level login, or you can set up two different groups.
Yeah, and I'll show in a little bit how instructors can divide their students into multiple groups, but it can be done at either level.
Yes, instruction leads have a different login.
Okay. So since we're moving into this instructor type questions, how about we go ahead and go to the instructor page and start working through that. And then if you have more questions, I'm happy to always come back to this page if need be. Okay, so let's log out of this. Okay, so for instructors, like was just asked, instructors have their own logins completely unrelated to the program directors. Instructors can create their own actually, so instructors have to go in and sign up. So I'll walk you through that process right now. This is the exact same process as for students who are signing up. The only difference is I'm going to select the instructor button here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. For instructors, you set your own username and password. Each of them does need to be 6 characters long at least. So I'm just going to create a random username and then input my information. Again, passwords at least 6 characters, and then make sure to repeat it. And then here, when you're selecting your language, you can start by just typing in a language, but then you do need to make sure that you select the language from the drop-down menu. If you just type a language all the way in without selecting from that drop-down, it might not populate correctly. And then go ahead and click I am not a robot. It will occasionally ask you to complete some tasks, such as selecting between pictures to verify that you're not a robot, but it doesn't always do that. So in this case, I didn't have to. So next we have to select our program state. I'm going to do Oregon because that's where I'm at right now. And then program language and program. So again, all of this is just for demo purposes. Yours will have your actual groups. And here, selecting the group, this is again why it's important for program directors to set up groups right away, because without this, teachers can't select the specific group they're supposed to be a part of. So I'm going to just select the demo group and sign up. And so that's really it for the sign up process. That's all you have to do. And this takes us to the teacher platform. This is what the teacher's dashboard will look like. So I'll just briefly scroll down through it, and then we'll go through piece by piece. So pretty long. So first, some of you were asking questions about grouping different students. So here you have the My Group section. If you want to divide students, say you have intermediate students and some of them are very clearly intermediate low and others are very clearly intermediate high, you might consider grouping them or regrouping students as you see fit. So you can always add a new group by selecting this plus, or also this one up here. And so that just pulls up this window where you can enter the group's information.
Real quick,
go ahead, Carl.
Pull up that window again.
Yeah.
The really important thing is the member of. This is the kind of parent level group. If you have multiple groups, as you start creating additional groups, that list will grow because the groups you have access to. So just make sure that you're making it a subgroup of the correct group that you want.
Yeah, you don't want to nest into the wrong group. So then scrolling down here, we have access to all the members. Here you see we have a lot of instructors for this demo page because it's a demo page, but in general, you'll probably only have one or two or a handful of instructors. And then here you see students. Teachers have the ability to create usernames and passwords for their students. I highly recommend that you first have students sign up themselves using that same process we saw for the instructors. That way it gives the students a chance to really roam through their dashboard, click around and figure out the site themselves for a little bit. It can be a great lab activity. But that being said, teachers do have this ability, so I'll show you both how to add individual students and also groups of students all at once. To add individual students, it's this first little box that says Add Student. You just click that, and then you enter the username for your student. I'm going to, again, create a random one, but this, again, does have to be at least 6 characters. So now I'm just going to go through and do basically the same thing we did for the instructor, but just the instructor's doing it now for a student. I'm going to enter email, and then again, the language, make sure, whoa, why did that autofill? Make sure you select from the drop-down menu. And then once you save, that student will now show up in your sort of roster here. So there's a lot of Isabel students, I realize, but it's there, it's this one. And so then that's pretty simple. The batch uploading students is what I'll show you next. It's just a little bit more involved. So you click batch upload students, and then you'll see here that you need to upload a CSV file. You can download this template by clicking here. I've already downloaded the template, so I'll switch the screen share over to show you what that looks like. Let's see if I can sort of seamlessly try to do that. I'm going to stop the screen share really quickly and pull up the CSV for you guys. Okay. Sorry, bear with me here. Okay, so this is what the CSV file looks like. I just entered 3 made up students for the purposes of showing you guys what this looks like. Important to note, you do need to have their name and then username and password. I'm going to reiterate again, at least 6 characters. And then with email, it will require that you add an email, but different programs will have different rules and guidelines about this. If you do not want to put your student's email, you can optionally put the teacher email or even fake emails. I've known some programs definitely will do just fake emails for the purposes of privacy for their students or teachers.
I'll just note that the only thing that we use the email for is when a user requests a password reset.
Yeah.
Instructors, Isabel will show you, instructors can reset students' passwords for them if need be, but an individual user can also request that their password gets reset, and in that case, we do use that email address. So if it's an invalid email, there's no way to reset that password yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it is recommended that you use at least the teacher's email unless your program will not permit you to do so. So this is what the CSV file looks like, pretty simple, and you just fill in with any number of students that you might have, and then you should be sure to save that file. Now I'm going to go back to the other page to show you how to pull that up on Pulsar. So let's make this full screen. Okay, so back to here. Now we're going to go to choose file, and we're going to upload that template that we downloaded. Then here, this is where you would change the language for the group that you're uploading to. And once again, select the relevant group. So if you have multiple groups, make sure you are putting the students in whichever group you actually want them in. And then we just click upload. So now you can see that the students were added successfully. Sometimes it'll give you an error code if a student was a part of a previous StarTalk program, and so they already have a login, but you can choose to just approve them and port them into the new group. So I'm going to click done. Now this page has refreshed, and we can see like there's one of the new students, and they should all be in our roster here. There's the other one, and the final one is down here. So they were uploaded successfully. So that's how you can upload the student. But then like Carl was saying, you have some other functions you can do, such as resetting student password. To do that, you just click that little caret here and click this reset password. And then you just do the new password, repeat it, click save, and click OK. This, I would say, is definitely something you want to be doing with the students, or you can like set them up with a temporary password if they forgot their password, and then they can go in later and change it themselves. There's also the ability to remove students from here, and then the ability to view your students' evidence. So we're going to click that. Hopefully the student has some. Okay, good. So this takes you to the learner's evidence. So this is everything this learner has uploaded. So say you're going through and you want to review a student's evidence, you can either just scroll through, or you can use this on the left. All of this will help you search through and filter. So you can enter titles here. It's probably good practice to have some sort of naming convention if you're going to want to be searching through titles, just because students can name things whatever they want. But if not, there are lots of other ways to filter through. So you can filter by type of evidence, whether it's a PDF or a writing sample or an audio file. And you can also sort here by the mode or level. Note, Pulsar programs will only be using the Accessible Accessible 2.0. And so like you can select, I only want to look at presentational communication, which this student doesn't have. You can see here that when you click multiple, so if I click the interpersonal communication, it doesn't unclick presentational. You have to actively unclick things as well. And then the final thing, you can also search through levels, such as novice, intermediate, mid, whatever levels that student might have uploaded work for. So going back to the main page here, that's all you can do from the student section here. but reviewing evidence can be done from multiple places. First, though, is the can-do cluster. So this should show up once all of your stuff has been approved. It will then sync through Sophie and should just show up for you. You shouldn't have to do anything. If for some reason your can-do clusters are not showing up, please contact us. It might be stuck somewhere along the process, or we can help you find out what's going on. If the program director has allowed teachers to make changes, then they can do so by clicking this little edit button here. If they don't have the ability to make changes, this button will not be there. And so if you click edit, it'll take you to this assign can do page. And so here you can make new can do clusters if you feel the need to say you want to split things up day by day, or if for some reason, if you're adding something new and you want to keep that separate from the program's can do, you might create a new one. Here you can also see your groups. So if you have multiple groups, here we just have the demo group for castles. If you have multiple groups, you can check and uncheck which groups receive which clusters. But so let's say that a teacher wants to change something about the can-do cluster that they've been given. They can go through here and they can either add custom learning targets using this button and type in a custom one, or they can say uncheck can-do statements that they feel like is not really applicable to their situation. And then they can additionally click ones that they weren't automatically given that they want to, or think that they have time to get to. So again, that's only available if teachers were given the permission to do so by the program director. But that's sort of very basically what this page looked like. Briefly also here in this, you can switch between modes, presentational, communication, or interpersonal. The little number here you see trips people up sometimes, but that's just the number of can-do statements you have selected for that mode. So as you select more, that number will go up, or if you deselect them, that'll go down. And then you can also search through the can-do statements by levels, so novice, low, mid, high, just to help you navigate that. Another thing that you have access to from that can-do cluster would be the reports, which is this red button, view reports. And this is what will show you what students have been self-assessing. So you can look at not only aggregate reports, but also if you scroll down, you can see individual student reports. So we'll go to learners aggregate report, for example. We can see that for the different modes, they haven't uploaded a whole lot. But as students upload here for the different modes, they'll get different bars. Here you can see along the x-axis, it just goes up by level. But then you can also look at the can-do report, which will show you for individual can-do statements what the student has self-assessed. So you can see for most of these things, they have not started. But as they reassess themselves or upload evidence, then they will change. It looks like we might have a question here in the chat, so I'm going to pause real quick and look at that. And if it will let me. I apologize, my computer is being quite slow at the moment. Is there a way to take instructors off of a group? Yes, there is. I'll show you real quick. It's pretty much the same process, actually.
Yeah, I typed it in, but why don't you go ahead and show us?
Oh, okay.
It's actually a little different.
Oh, it is different? Oh, okay. I apologize.
Down for instructors. So there is a way, but basically the instructor has to remove themselves from the group. Basically every user has the ability to remove themselves. So Isabel, if you could go to the top right corner, and go to profile. Yep, profile. So all users have the same profile access. You'll be prompted for this terms and conditions. But if you go to the sections in the left sidebar here and scroll down, You can see which groups you're in, and you can unjoin a group. So the instructor could remove themselves from the group. If you need help removing, say, a different instructor, email us at pulsar@uoregon.edu, and we can do it from our end.
Okay, thank you so much, Carl. So that's pretty much what that looks like. The next thing I'll take you into is reflection before we look at what the rest of the site aside from the dashboard looks like. In reflection, you're going to see all of the different pieces of evidence that students have uploaded. And this is just sorted by most recent. So you can see there's multiple students' evidence here, and also all different types of evidence. But this is basically the most easily accessible place to just see all of the evidence, not sorted. So let's go ahead and click on one, and I'll show you how you can review this evidence. So here we see that tutorial student has sent us this piece of evidence, and they have rated themselves as saying that they can do this well. The can-do statement here is, I can describe things I see and do on my trip. If we think that they're, for example, we think that this doesn't show that they can do this well, but only can do with help, or maybe we think that it's still a goal for them, we should ask them to reconsider by pressing this little X. And then you can change the slider to reflect what we think their evidence actually says. You should probably also add some comments, though it's not required to add comments. And then you can click review. So that's what it looks like to reconsider. For this one, I'll show you what it looks like to agree. This student has rated themselves as saying that they can do, for the can-do statement, I can participate in a traditional Chinese tea ceremony. So again, leave feedback, and this time we'll say we agree with this evaluation. And again, you can leave any comments and click review. Once you do that, if you go up and refresh your page, those pieces of evidence will go away, and instead you'll be left with the most recent pieces of evidence that have not yet been reviewed. When you review a student's evidence, they will get a notification and prompt to look at what you have reviewed. And I'll go more into that piece later when we're in the student section. So that's pretty simple and really about all you can do from the dashboard. If you go over to the About section here, like I said, this is where everything is that we went over in the program director, so that's cross-platform. Here is this little bell, so if a student responds to your review, this is where you'll get a notification about it. None of our demo students have responded to anything, so there's no notification, but if there is, there should be a little red dot on it to show you that. So here for the rest of the site, I'm just going to walk you through the other pages in it. We're currently on the dashboard. You also have this contact page, which is essentially the same thing as what you pull up from the little question mark bubble that we saw before. It's the tech support help page. And it also has our contact information here at the top. This, again, is a different page, so if you want to stay where you're at and enter any sort of issues you may be having on contact or tech support, you can use the question mark bubble. We also have the Assign Can-Do statement page. This you could also access from the little edit button on the Can-Do cluster like we saw before, exact same page. And then we have the profile. This is what we just saw when Carl was showing us how to unjoin from groups. From the profile, we also have your username and password and your email, so you can change any of those at any time. You can add any languages. Say you're teaching multiple languages, you can add them there. And you can also write a biography. This can be just kind of a great space to reflect or to put your intentions for a program. And it can be a nice thing to look back at later. Additionally, tutorials like we saw before can be accessed here. These are, again, the same tutorials we saw before, just we try to sort of put them everywhere, so you guys will definitely find them. And that is really all of the functionalities for the teacher site. So before we move on to students, let's have some time for questions. You can either unmute yourself again or type in the chat bar, and we will check both things.
One thing, Isabel, that I just thought of that might be useful just to mention again is if you scroll down to a student, like learner, for instance, and hit the little arrow and go to view evidence, and you're looking at all the students' evidence, this shows all evidence whether you've left feedback or not. So, you know, once it disappears off of the main dashboard because you've already given feedback, but say you need to go find that piece of evidence again, this would be the way to do it, is to find that individual student and look at their evidence as a whole. And this will show you all of that student's evidence. You can also leave feedback from this page as well, and it's the same exact interface.
Yeah. Yeah, so once you review evidence and from the dashboard, it doesn't disappear forever. It's all found still within the learner. It's just a way to declutter the dashboard, but you can still access this here anytime.
I have a question. I do tech for StarTalk, and I help with the recordings and the videos. Can I be added in each teacher's as a teacher with like the 4 Chinese teachers and then the 3 Russian teachers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically,
and so I just need access to students.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm a little unsure though. What you're trying to upload for the students or no?
Well, I'm brand new to this. This is my first tutorial, and I'm beginning to realize they can upload for themselves. But like especially with videos, can we download from Pulsar?
You can download from the instructor side. So you would be, so set up an instructor login for yourself, or have the lead instructor can add you as a new instructor. Then you'll have access to see what has been uploaded by students.
Right.
One thing we won't go over in this webinar, but we always encourage, especially for students, is we have the mobile apps, both Android and iOS for Pulsar. And that's actually the easiest way for students to upload evidence. And they can directly capture video and photo and audio right on their phone or smartphone.
That was going to be another question. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just to piggyback off of that, a note about the mobile apps. One, again, we highly recommend students use them if they can. And they are meant for evidence upload, so they're not going to have all of the same functionalities as the web version here. So they don't have the evidence reviewing process that sort of back and forth that teachers and students go through, but they can upload evidence using their phone and also look back at evidence. Okay, so if there's not any
other questions, Isabel, in the chat here. One is about notifications. If the teacher adds a comment, students will, as we'll show, as it looks the same at the top menu bar, the little bell icon will show when a student has a comment from an instructor, and they'll be able to directly go to that piece of evidence from there. It is not an email notification though.
Correct. And Carl, real quick, just so you know, I'm having trouble with my chat window not popping up, so you might.
I'm keeping an eye on it. No problem. Will students be able to keep this account any fee related? For StarTalk students, there are no fees related. They can keep the accounts, but know that like the programs get set up every year for the current program years, so students get removed from previous programs, things like that. There is no fee related to use the Pulsar version. If the student wants to actually use Linguafolio, that is a different version and there is a fee related. There's also another question here, how to export students' evidence they uploaded. So we're actually currently in the process of working on an export feature that makes it really easy to export like an entire portfolio. The only option right now to export a student's evidence, sorry, some other chat is coming in here, would be to, yes, go to view evidence. And for instance, like a photo here, you would have to right click on the photo and then save as, and that will let you download, say, the photo. You could usually do the same thing for audio and video files as well. Obviously text, you can just copy and paste.
Yeah.
A couple other questions in the chat here. Does the app work for iPads? Yes. Again, the apps are only for students, but it does work on iPads as well as Android tablets. Mobile app available for instructors. It's only for students right now. So instructors still go through the website. You can use the website, however, on a iPad, say in the mobile browser. It should work. Note that it's a little squished on a smaller screen, but it does work. They leave a program, they don't have an account anymore. That's not totally true. So an account will still exist in the system. They just won't have any, say, like can-do statements assigned to them through a program because they have no program. We have no way of knowing. What about Chromebooks? Chromebooks, we recommend using Chrome browser. If the Chromebook allows installing Android apps through the Play Store, you can install the app, but not all features work. So Chromebooks are really tricky about using the camera especially. So otherwise, the app should mostly work on a Chromebook, but probably the easiest way on a Chromebook would be to just use the Chrome browser and go to the direct website. All right, any other questions here before we move on to the student side of things? Anything related to instructors? All right, I think we're good, Isabel.
Great, thank you so much for fielding those. Okay, so let's switch over to the student side. Since the sign-up process is the same for students, I'm actually going to just log into a already created demo student. Just to reiterate again, 6 characters for both the username and password. And hopefully that's correct. Okay, so this is what the student's dashboard will look like. It starts off here with the program's can-do statements. So these were the same ones we saw for the teacher. If you scroll down, you have your proficiency overview. This little circle, the different colored circles correspond to different levels. So orange is novice, blue is intermediate, and purple is advanced. And you can see here in the orange, there's the darker orange that just shows that the student has uploaded evidence for this, which would be the interpersonal communication for novice mid. And so you see there's 3 rings per color. So the first and lightest one would be the low, and then middle color is mid, and the darkest color is advanced. So students, it's kind of a fun way for them to see their progress as they upload evidence. This will continue to fill up. And then if you scroll down, we have advanced upload. So I will go through sort of each in more depth here. We're going to start just with the can-do statements. So if you click on the blue box, the box is not necessarily going to be blue in color. You can actually change color for different can-do clusters, but in this case it was blue. Either way, the student just clicks the box, and then they will be taken to all of the different can-do statements that has been assigned to them. So we can see that this demo student has uploaded evidence for some of them and has sort of self-assessed for others. You should note that it will not populate in the proficiency overview unless evidence has been uploaded for it and they have rated themselves at least can do or can do well. So for example, this one here, the I can ask and talk about family members and their characteristics, because the demo student did not upload evidence, it will not show up. So I will go ahead and upload evidence for that one. If you click the red evidence button here, you will get this pop-up that will show you all the different types of evidence that you can upload. So going from left to right here, the first is writing samples. For this, the student will type directly into a text box that is provided for them. They can also copy and paste. They can also upload pictures, videos, and audio files that have been pre-recorded and are just already on their computer. But they can also record audio from the browser here, as well as upload PDFs and Word documents and PowerPoints. And then the last one here is just embedded codes or URLs. So say they uploaded a YouTube video that shows some sort of evidence, they could embed the link here and then the teachers have access to it. For the purposes of the demo, I'm going to do a writing sample because that's the quickest to just sort of quickly go through. For the title, I'm just going to put something. Again, if you have some sort of naming convention, the title is where students would follow that to help you organize their evidence. But if you don't, then they can just create whichever title they want. We're just going to put in the word text, but in reality, a student would fill that up with whatever evidence they have. Then you can see here, this is where their languages are. So Arabic is the language that this student that is part of the student's group, so it would be, that's the only option. But if a student is, say, a part of multiple language learning groups or is learning multiple languages, they might have multiple from that drop-down menu. So it's important for students to be aware of that so that they don't accidentally upload to the incorrect language. So we're going to go ahead and click next, and then from here we can review our evidence. And if for some reason we feel like it needs some editing, you can always go back at any point selecting this go back button. Again, here you see the self-assessment. The student has said that they can do this task well. So we're going to save and submit that. You can see that from uploading to a can-do cluster, since you're choosing the can-do cluster initially, the upload process is very quick. The next step I'm going to show you is how to do the advanced upload, which is a little bit different. So for advanced uploads, you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. And here, instead of choosing how to upload by can-do statement, you're instead first selecting the type of evidence. So again, I'm going to do writing sample. And then after we've typed in our evidence, we're going to be taken to this page. So from here, we select the can-do cluster. If a student has access to multiple, they'll have multiple that show there that they can choose between. And then they're going to select the mode. If a student is unsure which mode fits them best, they can read underneath here. Once they select one, they'll be given a little body of text that will describe it, as well as some examples of things that fall under that category. And again, you can toggle between the two until you decide which you like best. We're going to go ahead and say presentational communication. And then you go ahead and select the level. Again, if you have multiple levels, for example, this is both mid and high, you can read about what that level feels like and looks like for a student. That way students can continue to sort of self-assess as they go. And note that throughout this whole process, you have the go back option. So once you have finished doing all of that, you get to select the individual can-do statement. So for this, there's only one for the novice high. But for example, maybe you get here and there isn't a can-do statement that you feel fits the evidence you've selected to upload. You can always use this drop-down menu to toggle between the different levels or the different modes. Alternatively, you can go back at any time. Then you go ahead and select your self-assessment. This was already uploaded to previously, so it already has one, but in general, it would start at the not started side. And then once that's all done, you get to review your evidence just like you do for the can-do cluster uploading, and then finally save and submit. So the different types of evidence upload there just vary depending on what type of, if you say know that you want to upload to a specific can-do statement, or you're going through can-do statement by can-do statement uploading evidence, you probably want to start with the can-do cluster. But if, for example, a student has some evidence and they're not really sure where it fits yet, then the advanced upload is a great option because they can just upload their evidence and then see what fits it best after the fact. Again, once they upload evidence, it should show up here in their proficiency overview, and we'll just color in whichever level a little bit darker. So if it was blue, it would show up a little bit darker blue. So I think I saw that there are some questions popping up in the chat, so let's take a...
Yeah, the only unanswered question so far, Isabel, is how to delete evidence, but I think you're going to show that here pretty shortly.
Yes, okay, great. Thank you, Carl. Okay, so really quickly, here you can see the same bell that we saw with the teachers. There's this little red dot with the exclamation point, which tells us that the student has a notification. So if you click that, you can see that the teachers have commented on work. And we can go ahead and click on that, and it'll take us to the My Evidence page. So this is where we see all of the evidence. It's very similar to the page that we saw on the teacher's side. So if we scroll down here, we can see that this piece of evidence, which I reviewed just a moment ago as the teacher, has appeared now on the student's side. This teacher asked the student to reconsider And the student now has the same ability to either agree with the teacher's assessment or ask the teacher to reconsider. So this creates this really intentional back and forth between student and teacher that helps really helps the student reflect on their self-assessment and also the quality of their evidence. I'm just going to go ahead and click agree, and then you can see that the change was accepted. If I had said reconsider, then it would have been about the same as the teacher, and I could add any comments and say why I think that the teacher should reconsider their reconsideration of my evidence. Again, all of the sorting is the same. You can sort by type or mode or level, and as well as title. And I can also reflect myself as a student on my evidence. So if I click the reflect button, I get this little text box pop up, which is a really important thing. It's really good to have students reflecting throughout the course of the term or the program, especially after they've input a lot of evidence. It can kind of, they can lose track of maybe where they've started. And so it's good to look back every once in a while and reflect on how far they've come or reflect on the quality of the evidence. And so that reflection process is facilitated through here. So if you need to delete evidence, like Carl was saying, you can go to the specific piece of evidence and you can delete it. You also have the ability to archive it here as well. But that, again, is just through this little cog that's up on the corner of each piece of evidence. Was that the only question so far, Carl?
Yes, I think so. There was a quick question just about join codes. If you guys see join codes, Pulsar doesn't use the join codes. That's a carryover from previous versions. So you can essentially ignore join codes.
Okay, great. The student interface really looks very similar to the teacher one. We also have the same contact page, the dashboard you already saw. And then we have the profile. Students have the same profile with a biography, languages, the ability to change their username and password. And then they also have access to the same tutorials, either through the tutorial page here or through the same about page that we saw before with the teacher and program director. So again, it's really good to allow your students to play with the page for a little bit, and also if they're having trouble, they can use the tutorials, and you can also see their tutorials as well. So again, I think I previously stated it's a good idea for teachers as well to look through some of the student tutorials, just so that you can have a better idea of how to best help your students should they run into any problems. And that is really the overview of the student page. Carl, is there anything else you can think of to mention about the student interface?
Nope, I think that's just about it.
Okay, well then, does anyone have questions about either the student interface or any of the previous ones that might have come up that you feel weren't answered?
Looks like no questions.
Okay, awesome. So if we don't have any questions, then that will conclude this presentation for the overview of Pulsar. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I will hang on the call for just a little bit longer just to catch any last minute questions, but you guys are free to sign out anytime. To leave the meeting, there should be just a little leave meeting button on your control menu. But thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
So to answer the question that was just posted here, is there a PDF guide or something already made? If you look on the About page where we showed the tutorials, there are overviews there. There's a PDF overview and also a video overview that you can give to students. Additionally, this webinar, should you feel that is helpful, will also be posted to that same tutorial page.
But there are specific tutorials for students and how they use the interface.
Correct. Yeah, there's an overview tutorial for students, and then there's also smaller tutorials that break down each specific aspect.